Good day, everyone. My name is Stan. I'm VP of Product at AppMagic. And today I will be talking about how to boost your mobile revenue with smart live ops research and with competitor analysis. So, yeah, this is a wonderful magic link that you can use to connect with me if you want. I work, as I've already mentioned, as VP of Product. And during my career, I've been working as a researcher, analyst, and product manager. I've also been working as a teacher for 10 years, so this is a side hustle of mine. And I do a lot of research with my job, so it's something I really care about. About AppMagic as well. So AppMagic, for those of you who don't know, it's an analytical service for analyzing mobile markets and gaining actionable insights. And during the last couple of years, we've analyzed live ops of more than 170 games. We tracked all of them, and we've gathered results found in a product. And right now I will try to share the main knowledge we've gathered along the way with you. So buckle up, because insights are coming. The best result of this talk, for me at least, will be if you will have real actionable insights you can take away and use in your job right away. So this will be like the best outtake. But why live ops? Why is it so important right now? I can just share several numbers with you which we calculated last year. So as we all know, the mobile industry is still in the decline. So 2 years in a row, revenue wasn't growing and wasn't even on plateau. It was declining, which is pretty turbulent, to say at least. And it's difficult to operate in a situation like that, and it's really important to work with already successful games. Which is even more important, last year, we've analyzed all the new casual games that entered the market. We've analyzed all the casual games, and only half a percent were successful. So less than 0.5% of all games released, and we are not talking about trash games here. These are good games developed by good developers. But only less than 0.5% gained financial success. So basically, in a nutshell, it means that developing new games is risky, difficult, and extremely expensive. And finally, when we are thinking about big games, big names during last years like Monopoly Go or Marvel Snap or Royal Match, all of these games have a return of investment period for more than a year. So it's a long game, it's a long run, and it's all about live ops. And it's not just us. So quoting CEO of Supercell, the question facing us now is, how do we make each game even better by adding new content and features? So basically, Ilka is talking about the same thing. How do we make live ops the proper way? And that's a good question, really. How? We've talked with all the main players in the industry, with Playrix, Supercell, King, Playtika, basically all the big guys. And these are 3 things that we've heard most of the times. Think ahead, know your audience and your game, and analyze and research market. I will be talking mainly about the third point here today, because this is something we've heard in the majority of the cases. But I also will tackle the first 2 right now, because it's important to understand what we are talking about. So, think ahead basically reads as, don't build your Rails on the go. Yes, of course, and we've heard a lot of it. We have different priorities right now. When building a game, we have to be sure that our monetization tests and our retention tests are great, that we've got core audience, that our scaling is working, and it's totally understandable. But be sure that you don't miss the right moment, because there are many stories when the game is already in production, it's operating, it's profitable, and live ops is not even there. So when thinking about live ops, think one step ahead. Look when the tests are right. So when you got your monetization, your retention, and they are working. Be sure that there is marketing scaling is planned, so there is a big bunch of users that will come to your game, and you want them to stay in your game. And of course, when you already have core audience, you want to retain and engage more. All right, so say we know what is the right moment, but then how to build live ops? Well, know your audience and know your game. These are the foundations for a good live ops system. Try asking yourself these questions. What do we want to achieve? What do we already have in the game? What is missing? What is our audience? And what do they already love? So all of these will help you building a really good, profitable live ops that will be a next step for the players and not just another example of doing something wrong. So here are two examples, Monopoly Go and June's Journey, and both of them build really useful live ops knowing their game. The first one with Monopoly Go, and all the screenshots I will be showing here are from the tool I've already mentioned, and most of the examples will be based on the tool because that's the data we've already gathered. So if you look at the events calendar of Monopoly Go, you will notice that there are a lot of competitive events there. And it is not strange because in the core loop, Monopoly Go is quite competitive. It's a social game, and it introduces competitive events because it knows its core, it knows itself. Now compare it to June's Journey, a really famous big title in hidden object niche. They are also working with social audience, but their audience are more about helping each other rather than competing with each other. That's why they introduce a lot of collaborational or cooperational events. Yes, they also have competitive events, but the majority of social events will be cooperating. So once again, we've got Monopoly Go, pretty competitive in its core, and there are a lot of competitive events. And then you've got June's Journey with a lot of cooperative events. Makes sense. And last but not least, analyzing and researching markets. So here, you really have to ask yourself, how my competitors run their live ops? What is already working for them? What are the best practices? What is working and what is not? Because it is also really important. What is the new talk of the town? What are the new features or new events introduced recently? And what events perform the best? So what events bring the best boost in retention or the best boost in revenue? And here are several approaches to live ops research. Of course, these are not all of them, but they are pretty popular. So the first one sounds like, and I'm sure you've heard it, no, we don't need it. We know everything ourselves. Spoiler alert, they don't. So it's like trying to understand what is going on in a dark forest without a map or a flashlight. Use data because it will help you to have much better decisions. Second approach, a dedicated team of analysts. And that is something we heard a lot when talking with experts from the industry. Yeah, we've got a team or several teams of dedicated specialists, researchers, analysts, who spend hundreds and hundreds of hours to work with a Google spreadsheet or Excel. But it takes time, and it's pretty expensive, I might say. And then there are custom researches made by an external team. They usually are pretty long, like they take a quarter or maybe even half a year. They're really pricey, but what is even more important, they are unpredictable. So you can be sure about the result of the data you will have in the end. And then there is another solution. The one I was talking before is the tool that we've released, LiveOps and Updates Calendar. Basically what it does, it helps to analyze how top grossing games and your competitors run their LiveOps and what events really boost revenue. So we've analyzed all casual market, we covered partly the core market, and now I will share some of the tips, tricks, and insights that we've gathered along the way. Let's begin with understanding what are the initial steps when working with LiveOps, either with an already existing game or when you're building a game from scratch. The first one is building a regular grid. So what you want to do is analyze your competitors and understand what type of basic grid they are using right now and how to implement it in your product. Basically, what you're looking for is regular events from top grossing games with stable performance boost. So it means that these games really know what they are doing, and these type of events are working for them. In this case, let's take Royal Match, and I will have a lot of real data, real game examples in the slides upcoming. What you can see is that the majority of the events they are running are regular events. That's the basis of the grid. Which is even more important, you can divide and dissect it into what we call basic event block. So this is a combination of events that run on a regular basis, one after another. Basically, in their case, the length of this event block is a week. So during a week, they have this piece of content, and then they repeat it once again and once again. And it really helps with the revenue. So you can see all the boosts. Of course, here is the moment when we can say that there is organic boost during the weekends, and it's totally understandable. But for them, using this type of basic event block really works. So if you're building, say, a game like Monopoly Go, and you're thinking about live ops, that's the first thing you should be paying attention to. But be aware, there is a trap here. So in some situations, there is a trap of false stability, which can be boring. We are talking about regular events that happen times and times after another. Here is a good example of Love and Pies. Great game, wonderful core, visual, narrative. And they had a very good start, but right now they're on a plateau, struggling with attaining players. And one of the reasons for that is their live ops is also built on a basis grid, but the size of the basic event block is too small. So basically, during a week, you have only 3 events of the same kind. They're almost reskins. And it's not really captivating even for new players. After a month, you've seen most of the content. So in this case, be sure that you are paying attention to the top grossing games, because it really will help with a good regular grid. Okay, say we've built it, but now we really have to fight the boredom, as we already seen. So we have to work with variety and continuity. And what I'm talking here about is enlivening a regular grid with different type of events, different type of duration, repeatability, content, social, and much more. So in our case, we use a special tagging system with more than 35 different types of events, and you can track what type of events we're running in the regular grid. So yes, they happen on a regular basis, but they can be different. Some of them can be competitive. Some of them can be built around new narrative pieces, on new visual style, on new expeditions, on new mini levels. So understanding what type of content is included is really important. Say, another good example, Monopoly Go. Here you can see that their events are running simultaneously, so there are a lot of events happening at the same time, of different length, of different content, but they happen all the time and they're available for the player. And at the same time, their events are running seamlessly. One event begins right after another. So if you're hooked and engaged, you have content to interact with. All right, we've got our basic grid. We made it interesting with variety. And now let's talk about holidays and weekends. Let's talk about sprinkle on the top. Use special occasions to boost the revenue even more. And the good news here, and we've already mentioned it, is that players and payers are more active during these periods organically, so they are willing to do it. Don't miss it. Use all these occasions, both weekends and special holidays, festive periods, to boost your growth even more. A great example here is Merge Mansion. You probably know this game because of the advertisements with the mysterious granny and Pedro Pascal as a detective. But what they do really well is how they work with holiday occasions. For example, choosing only holiday events, you can see that from the beginning of December up to end of January, they had special events of different types going all winter season simultaneously. So it's not just 1 week or 2 week winter event with a special pass, but several events running at the same time that really help to boost the revenue. And that's another outtake, so don't just launch 1 event or 2 events. Use these festive period to the fullest, because payers and players are ready to engage. By the way, talking about weekends, another good example is Frozen City. So here, what they did really well is work with the weekend events. You can see the gray bars. We highlight the periods of weekends with them, and you can see the growth there. You can also see how they worked with the basic grid. It's much smaller than in Royal Match we've seen before, and it's not so frequent, but in the end of each regular basic grid, they have an irregular event, and it's different each time. It really helps to boost the revenue because you've got this basic piece during the week, usually from Wednesday to Friday, and then during the weekend, you've got a cherry on the top. You've got a special type of event that you can be engaged in. By the way, usually with leaderboards and social competitive mechanics. And what is good is that they reskin their events a lot, which help them to keep it fresh for the players. By the way, talking about reskins and reusement. So development is pricey. We all know that. Rebalancing, working with different types of content, introducing new gameplay features takes time and takes resources. So don't be shy and use working events on a regular basis, especially when acquiring users, because it basically means that in a month, there will be a big bunch of users that haven't seen the events running right now. And they will be fresh for them. They will be new for them. They will be engaged. Also, save resources with smart reskins. When I'm talking smart, I'm talking about not just changing the color of the season pass you use or changing the color of the leaderboard, but rather working with the initial concept, understanding how it can be reshaped. For example, this is a great example of Travel Town, another merged with meta game. That is one of the founders of the niche, and it is one of the top grossing games in the niche. And what they do, they run one type of events with different type of reskins, but the same content inside. So how to find this type of events? We try to choose all one-time events by repeatability and choose all events of the same length, in our case, medium, from 4 to 10 days. And you can see right away that these are the same exact events, but they are used in different styles. Say, a trip to New York, a Greek getaway, a Parisian holiday, Italy, France. During the year, they've introduced several dozen events of this kind. They are the same inside. They've got a little different balance. So if you look at the rewards here, you can see that they work a little bit different. But the gameplay features inside and the balance inside is pretty much the same. Another possible trap here, so be aware, be really careful with the national themes, because we've talked with experts from the industry, and some people were saying that, for example, you're running a Japanese event, and of course, in Japan, the revenue is boosted, but then in the USA or in Tier 1 West countries, there is a drop in revenue. So be sure that your audience is ready for this type of content. In the case of Travel Town, the whole narrative and the whole core is all around traveling, all around resorts. And so it's a logical step to introduce different national stereotypes and national themes in the events as well. All right, we already have our basic creep. It's different. There are a lot of type of events. We used holidays and weekends, and we even saved resources with reskins and reuses. Now we have to track what is going on in the market. What type of content can we introduce? Market is big, it's gigantic, and trying to focus on everything at once can really be a bad idea, because you will end up analyzing the events that you might not even use in your game. So try to focus on what's already working. Either explore which events are performing for your competitors, or what has been recently launched. So you're either looking for new events that are, or new updates, new features, or you're looking for the events that basically boost your revenue, because they might work for you as well. In our case, we can explore both with the special toggles. So say for Frozen City, we can toggle new events only and see all the new events introduced during this time period. And what is I love especially about Frozen City is that guys introduce a lot of new content. So during even this period of time, they've introduced 4 or 5 new events of different types, different length. Which is even more interesting, they've introduced several important updates. So we try to track, not just the patch notes, because sometimes the important information is not included in the patch notes, but also we track the important updates, the new features, new monetization offers, new changes to the core that appear in the game and that you might be interested in. In this case, there was a new feature, login calendar, and this was the first idle tycoon to introduce it in Tier 1 West, which is surprising because it's like a default solution for a lot of games. But yeah, you can explore both new events and updates, and you should explore it to know what is going on. In other cases, you can track which updates and which events boosted the revenue significantly. And of course, you can look at the graphs and see the peaks and spikes by yourself. But sometimes the spike is so big compared to an average dynamic that we want to highlight it even more. In these cases, we show what was the spike, how much revenue it gained, and what were the events during this period of time. Of course, be careful, correlation is not a causation. That's the favorite thing of all analysts and product managers, but that's a good starting point. So instead of exploring all the market, is big, remember, we can focus first on the things that potentially work, and then maybe decompose all the others. By the way, that's a good example because you can see that in the end of the year, during December, they had 3 consecutive spikes. And usually it raises question, is it only events or there were other factors as well? In this case, we can see what were the downloads during this period of time, and we can see that for the first 2 events, they probably were running a big marketing campaign. But for the third one, they already worked with what was existing. And exploring more, you can go, for example, in Ad Intelligence tool in AppMagic or in another tool and see what type of creatives were running during this period of time, what were new creatives, and what were the most viewed ones and the most impressioned ones. So keep in mind other factors like UA when you see something different from what you've expected. All right, and now last but not least, seek potential opportunities. That is another example I really love. Explore not just your direct competitors, but also other niches and top grossing games. Track different niches that are next to yours and next to the one you're already aware of. And use what's working and know what's not working for your competitors to use it for your advance. We've already talked about Love and Pies, one of the founders of the genre that has a really good basis, but didn't work really well with live ops and is stagnating right now. And then there is Gossip Harbor. The game was released a year after the original game. The Chinese developers basically copied all the things that were working. They copied the meta, the UX UI, the narrative, the lore. I mean, these are 2 exact games. But they boosted the monetization and they boosted the live ops. So compare it, you can see right away that they've got different type of events. They introduced new type of events. They've got both regular and irregular part of their grid, calendar grid. And it really helps, and they ended up not just successful, they overpassed the original, and they're top 1 grossing game in their niche right now, which is absolutely crazy because usually the copycat gains like 5, maybe 10% of the original revenue. But still, here they are. And what they did, they explored what was already working in the market, in the niche, and they've introduced something that could be improved. So, wrapping up, if there are 3 things you will take away from this talk, I want them to be these. First of all, know your goals and know what's working for your game and your audience, because these will be the basis for your live ops, and this will really affect how you explore live ops in other games. Research smart and use best tools. Save your time for implementation, for running tests, and for understanding what can really help your audience and help your business goals, not just tracking the data and gathering it. And then use the data, find insights, explore big and wide, not just close up in your niche, explore other neighboring niches as well. And also explore deep and detailed. Know what was going in the exact update or exact event. What were the type of details, descriptions, images, videos in some kinds? What were the previous iterations of the same event? Use all this data in order to make the best choices possible. And that's it. Thank you for your attention. Thank you for being today. We'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Right, we have some questions here. Please raise your hand.
Yep. My name is Ivan, head of engineering at Lucid Reality Labs. Thank you for your speech, it was nice. I have 2 questions, basically, if we have time. So first of all, is about introduction of the live ops to the game that doesn't support it, like it wasn't supposed to be there. Obviously, it is timely, like costly, etc. So do you have any kind of gross numbers on how the existence of events and live ops may affect the revenue? Like average week without any events versus average week with some events within one game.
Yeah, that's a good question. So we've made an experiment. I've shown the game Frozen City. So what we did, we tried to calculate the average revenue boost during the weekends, especially in the games that are not actively running live ops. And we compared it to the revenue in Frozen City. And we could see that their live ops was, not live ops, their revenue boosts during the weekend were much higher. I'd say like 20 to 30% higher for sure. Of course, this is not a very good correlation because they might have a different user acquisition and it really can differ the picture. But the whole idea is that they use the live ops the best way possible. They implement, as I've already shown, irregular events after the basic event block, and that helps to boost regular organic growth even more. So I'd say, in general, it really helps. But there is another thing. You should be aware and should be sure that there is something to do in your core gameplay and your meta. Because introducing live ops without anything to do will just take goal setting for the players, take things for clear understanding of what to do in the game, and can ruin your metrics. But we also deconstructed a lot of games, and we've seen that nowadays, lots of games try to introduce live ops as early as possible, when especially the core loop begins to be a little bit boredom for the player. So the first moment, they might think about, maybe I should stop this player session. That's the moment you should introduce live ops.
Okay, got it. Can I ask the second question? Right. Yeah. Thanks. So you showed us a few charts with schedule for different games. Is it something that you have data to, or you collected it from the other games on some approaches?
Yeah, good question. So we collected, and we are collecting this data manually. So we've got several dedicated specialists. We've got a special system of how we gather and tag and categorize this data. But basically, we track, as I've mentioned, more than 170 games in the niche. Mm-hmm. We play each dem daily, so without any weekends, without any holidays. We track all the events that are going in the games, and we introduce them in the calendar to be aware that what is going on, basically, yeah. And
what I'm wondering is, how do you deal with segmentation? Because if you do it manually, obviously you may not catch all the events, right?
That's a great question.
Nice.
And the answer, unfortunately, is that segmentation really exists. And we try to deal with it differently. So we tried, for example, to play on different accounts in different regions. We try to play, to imitate different monetization systems like non-payer, medium payer, and heavy payer. Spend a lot of money. But in the end of the day, it seems that there is no way to have a really coherent information about different segments from the outside. So the best thing you can do is track the most interesting regions. In our case, we try to track Tier 1 West, because it's usually the most popular. And you try to track the behavior of a non-paying user, because then you will have at least the information that can be compared. Because in other cases, you might be tracking non-payer usage in 5 games, payment users in 5 other games, and the data will not be consistent. So unfortunately, there is no magic solution to that, but at least we've tried different approaches, and this is something we ended up with. Thank you. Yep, you're welcome.
We're running a little bit out of time. If you can take a stand after.
Yeah, sure thing.
You can catch up after. We're tight on time.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
We'll be available, so we'll be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much.